3 large blocks with every language known on the planet, telling a basic 10 commandments again, saying, don't do this, don't do that, and never let the population ever grow, I think, 500 million on those things? Yeah, that would mean reducing the Earth's population by about 95%.
You know, somebody just carved 2014 into that particular.
I saw that. Yes,
I saw that. Just carved it in. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's creepy.
So Emily,
everyone who remembers the news broadcast for up until at least early 2013, the U.S. government, every agency was buying up massive amounts of ammunition. They were buying up vehicles. They were buying up guns. And it was like, for anyone that was really paying attention, what the heck are these guys going to do with that? They were expecting all of the prophecies and the predictions to be coming true as of December 21st, 2012 or early 2013. It all fell flat. And you haven't heard a single thing. All the FEMA camps were waiting for the survivors.
Yeah.
It's just amazing. It's amazing. The ETs are working against the powers that be on this planet because they don't want the same thing to happen as what happened during 1558 to 1600.
I don't think the ETs are monolithic. I think they're split just like we're split into factions.
They probably are. Eisenhower signed several treaties with the Greys. The Anunnaki warned him not to trust him. He did anyway, and that's probably why you've had the different things, the cattle being attacked, people being abducted back and forth. But the other ETs, there's good, there's bad. The other ETs are coming here every day. NASA's satellites, SOHO satellite, stereo ahead, stereo behind. U.S. Navy satellite cameras, the SECCHI, S-E-C-C-H-I, they're still showing these things showing up here. So it's just a matter of time.
Well, let me pass the ball back to Emily a little bit. Can you tell us from your perspective what you think is happening with the extraterrestrial politics? Who's ruling what, when, where, how, why?
Okay, well, we know for certain that Germany was negotiating with and back engineering saucer craft back in the 20s. I have pictures of saucer craft over Germany, 1928. Yes. And we know that the Vril Society had a couple of channelers that were pulling in Anunnaki stuff, and that the Nordics, who are tall whites, were negotiating with the Germans. And then we know, according to our friend Edward Snowden, that the Germans cut a deal after the war, Operation Paperclip and the Rat Lines, to move their scientists to the United States and South America. And my father had an uncle, Uncle Willie, Kaiser Wilhelm, who was familiar with what was going on with the Germans. And so my father, in 1943, during the war, he was living in the Bahamas, but he got an invitation to go to Fort Huachuca, Arizona, where that was the Area 51 of its day, where the Americans were starting to back engineer saucer craft and build their own at Fort Huachuca. So my dad knew about UFOs.
You're saying, Emily, I just want to make sure we get that. Don't gloss that over. You're saying back in 43, Americans were reverse engineering craft. Were they crashing? Were they being delivered? Where did they get this craft to reverse engineer?
They got it from Germany, and apparently the war with Germany was more apparent than real. The war with Germany was staged.
Mm-hmm.
It was staged by fascist fascists who were connected to the real society through their occult metaphysics, who believed in the efficacy of what we're going to be talking about, the Emerald Covenant Treaty. And under the Emerald Covenant Treaty, there was a certain method for evolving the humans on this planet that was written at the Orion Nebula at the end of the Lyran Wars, after the Lyran peoples who were cooperative and pacific and reasonable, nice, decent people, and they were wiped out by the Alpha Draconis, completely wiped out.
Time, because we're all here in human form, and we're linear, and we think in terms of time. When did this happen to the Lyrans? And you're not the first person that said this. I've had, who was it? I think it was, I looked into, somebody I interviewed in the last few weeks said the same thing. Oh, yeah. I think it was, no, I'll have to go back and listen. But they said that they were on a Lyran, in a Lyran incarnation when they were taken over and destroyed, and some of them escaped.
Yes,
but go ahead. So
and I remember a life then too. Okay, yes. So after the Lyran Wars, the higher minds at the Orion Nebula carved out this Emerald Covenant Treaty to set down how humanity would be allowed to evolve. And the person who knows more about the terms and details of that treaty, because she's written about it, is Ashayana Dean. She has a source. I don't know if it's an incarnate source or a subjective source, but she knows the details of that treaty, and I've got to get that out of her. But the upshot of that treaty is that ET races are not allowed under that treaty to do any of their own genetic manipulation. And that's why the Greys ended up doing it at Dulce, because they were breaking the Emerald Treaty. The Anunnaki,
they were talking about breaking the rules of planetary conduct by creating Homo sapiens, and they were saying that they weren't allowed to do this genetic engineering and creating a slave race. Were they in violation of
the Anunnaki were allowed to do genetic engineering, and they came here and they needed gold miners, and so they bred gold miners the way farmers breed cattle or horses, and that's why humans exist, because we are a hybrid between the indigenous tribes that were here, whatever condition they were in, and the Anunnaki, who carried their little bucket of semen and their little pine cone for applying the semen to the bottom of the ladies, because the ladies were so tiny compared to the Anunnaki, they couldn't actually have sex with them. All right.
I wondered if little pine cones were used as a method of artificial or insemination.
Yeah, it was an applicator. Yeah, it was the applicator for the stuff in the bucket.
How did life this planet? How did we get the indigenous people? Were they part of the group that were fleeing other planets that were subject to war?
Now, that's before Anunnaki history. We don't have any history of that. That's before.
Okay.
All we know of is what the Anunnaki have written down.
But isn't the Lyrans before Anunnaki?
Yes, Lyra is before Anunnaki, and Mars is before Anunnaki.
All right.
Because we went from Lyra to Mars to here.
Stuart Swerdlow said that the Lyrans were the first race that were in a humanoid form. Is that agreed?
Exactly. In this galaxy, there are other galaxies that have their own hominid humanoid DNA formats. But this format, yes, the first ones were at Lyra. Pardon?
Humanoids are common throughout the universe, correct?
Yes. Well, let's just say bipedal, sentient. One head, two arms, two legs. Although there are also insectoids and reptoids there are all kinds of forms. I got a kick out of one military guy who was describing, the dozens of different races of ETs that he, as a military guy, had to stand security for. And they had a problem with one race because every time they showed up, the security guys would have a heart attack and die of fright. I mean, it was just that bad. But I have no idea what galaxy they might have been from. Okay, so it's the Emerald Covenant that set out the process for evolving humanity. And the Enki line of thought is in compliance with that treaty, and that's why I have to do some more research there. The Enlil line of thought, that of allowing humanoids to create their to start with a set of laws and evolve laws and govern themselves by consent. That's a different line of thought that does not fit into the Emerald Covenant, and it's the reason why we've had this fight down through history between the occult hierarchy and the legalistic behaviorist covenant. That's the reason for all these fights.
Was Enlil Yahweh, and was Yahweh the one that gave Moses the tablets?
Yes, and the funny thing I found out about Enlil Yahweh, okay, and it has to do with the direction of Hebrew and the direction of cuneiform writing. The Anunnaki writing, like English, is from left to right. The Hebrew is from right to left. So when you read Yahweh, the YHWH is going to the left. When you read YHWH starting at the left and going to the right, it looks like Enlil. Enlil is just Yahweh read from the other direction.
Okay, so Enlil was Yahweh, and that's what we thought. And there's two different schools of thought, and so what's the Emerald school of thought? So
that's the Enki school of thought. Enki is actually doing what's in the Emerald Covenant that Enlil didn't approve of.
And what was the reason he didn't approve of it?
Because whole populations of innocent humans could be ethnically destroyed for no reason other than they were backward, or they weren't white enough, or they weren't this, or they weren't that. The treaty leaves the decision about what races get to stand and what races are erased with the host ETs. So the Anunnaki have been making decisions over the heads of humanity, and they are all associated with the movement of the Zionist movement, okay? And what we're seeing is ethnic cleansing of whole cultures, whole harmless cultures, because the decision is made by the Anunnaki over everybody's head that this culture is too primitive, it has to go. This culture is too primitive, it has to go. Like Pol Pot took out how many of his people? Idi Amin took out 1 million of his people. Stalin took out 20 million Russians. The dictators that become obsessed with killing people are serving the treaty that says, we think those people are too primitive to be able to adapt to our technology, so we're going to take them out. And that's
primitive instead of educating them, that treaty
instead of educating them, they take them out. Yeah. And Enlil said, no. You don't destroy a bunch of good people because they haven't learned enough yet. That's not a reason to destroy people. You execute people who are serial killers, who throw their babies into the fire, who sacrifice or abuse or